The Ghost Signal. Admiral Zafira Keth stood on the command bridge of the Eternal Dominion, her silver scales catching the soft blue glow of the tactical displays. The massive dreadnought was the pride of the Ketherian Empire, stretching nearly 3 kilometers from bow to stern and bristling with enough firepower to reduce a planet to cosmic dust. For 40 years, she had commanded this vessel through the Outer Rim territories, maintaining the peace that the Empire had built across 17 star systems. The Nexus sector had been quiet for decades. Too quiet, some whispered. It bordered the dead zone, a region of space that had been sealed off and forgotten after the human extinction event 2 centuries ago. The official records were brief and clinical. Humanity had been a primitive species that refused integration into the galactic community. They had chosen war over peace, destruction over progress. The Empire had done what was necessary to maintain order. "Admiral," came the voice of Commander Thane from the sensor station. His reptilian features were tense with concentration. "We're receiving some unusual readings from the quarantine perimeter." Zafira turned her attention to the main display. The dead zone appeared as a dark void on their screens, marked with warning beacons that had been broadcasting the same message for 200 years. "Quarantine zone. Biological hazard. Do not approach." But now, something was different. "What kind of readings, Commander?" "Energy signatures unlike anything in our databases. The pattern is organized, almost like a transmission, but using quantum frequencies we've never encountered before." Thane's voice carried a note of confusion that was unusual for the veteran officer. The bridge fell silent except for the soft hum of the ship's systems. Zafira had served long enough to know when something was truly wrong. The dead zone had been monitored constantly for 2 centuries. Nothing had ever emerged from it. Nothing had ever gone in and returned. Could it be some kind of automated system? Perhaps leftover human technology finally failing. "That's what we thought initially, Admiral. But the signal is getting stronger, and it's moving." The word hung in the air like a death sentence. Moving meant active. Active meant alive. And alive meant that everything they had been told about the human extinction event might have been wrong. "Red alert. All stations to full readiness. I want every sensor array focused on that signal." Zafira's command rang across the bridge as warning lights bathed everything in crimson. "And get me a direct line to High Command. They need to know about this immediately." The next few minutes passed in tense silence as the crew worked frantically at their stations. The Eternal Dominion was joined by her escort fleet, 4 heavy cruisers and a dozen patrol craft, all armed with the Empire's most advanced weapons. It should have been enough to handle any threat. Should have been. "Admiral, the signal just increased in intensity by 300%, Thane reported, his voice tight with disbelief. "And we're detecting massive displacement readings. Something big is coming through hyperspace." "How big?" "Bigger than us, Admiral. Much bigger." The main screen flickered and changed to show the empty void where the dead zone's boundary met normal space. For a moment, nothing happened. Then reality seemed to tear open like fabric, and something emerged that made every being on the bridge question everything they knew about the universe. The ship that materialized before them was ancient and alien, yet undeniably familiar. Its hull was scarred and weathered, covered in markings that looked almost organic. Strange energy patterns danced across its surface like living lightning. It was massive, easily twice the size of the Eternal Dominion, but it moved with a grace that defied its bulk. "Scan that vessel immediately," Zafira ordered. "I want to know everything about it." "Scans are strange, Admiral. The hull appears to be constructed from materials we don't recognize, but the energy signature matches historical records from the human archives. This is definitely of human origin, but the technology level is far beyond anything they were supposed to possess." The implications hit Zafira like a physical blow. If humans had survived, if they had been hiding in the dead zone for 2 centuries, developing technology in secret, The Empire's entire foundation was built on the assumption that humanity had been completely eliminated. Any response to our hails? Nothing on standard frequencies, Admiral. But we are detecting a broad-spectrum transmission. It's in an ancient human language. Put it through the translators. The bridge speakers crackled to life, and a voice emerged from the static. It was human, unmistakably so, but filled with a weight that spoke of centuries of pain and determination. This is a message from Earth, transmitted on the final day of our resistance. We are the children of Terra, and we do not surrender. We do not yield. We do not forget. To those who listen to this message in the future, know that humanity endures. We adapt. We survive. And someday we will return to reclaim our place among the stars. The message repeated itself over and over, each word hammering home the impossible truth. Humanity had survived. Admiral, we're being hailed. Direct communication request from the unknown vessel. Zafira straightened her uniform and nodded. On screen, the display flickered and revealed a human face. The woman appeared to be in her 40s, with dark skin marked by scars that spoke of hard-fought battles. Her hair was cut short and practical, and her eyes held a depth that seemed to contain centuries of accumulated wisdom and pain. She wore a uniform that was clearly military, but unlike anything in the Empire's databases. I am Captain Elena Vasquez of the Terran Hidden Fleet, vessel Terra's Revenge. I speak for the survivors of Earth and all human colonies. We meet again, Admiral Kef. The casual use of her name sent a chill down Zafira's spine. How do you know who I am? Elena smiled, but there was no warmth in it. We know everything about you, Admiral. We've been watching the Catharian Empire for a very long time. We know about your fleet movements, your supply lines, your weaknesses. We know about the lies you tell your people about what happened to humanity. Humanity was destroyed 2 centuries ago. You chose war over peace. We chose freedom over slavery, Elena replied calmly. The Empire gave us an ultimatum. Submit to your rule or be destroyed. We chose a third option. We disappeared. That's impossible. Our forces swept every human world. We confirmed the extinction. Elena's expression grew cold. You confirmed what we wanted you to confirm. While your fleets were busy destroying empty cities and abandoned colonies, the real human population was already gone. We had been preparing for decades, building ships designed to hide in dark matter streams, creating colonies in places your sensors couldn't detect. The bridge crew exchanged worried glances. If what this human was saying was true, then the Empire's greatest victory had been a carefully orchestrated deception. You're claiming that millions of humans simply vanished without a trace. Not millions, Admiral. Billions. Every man, woman, and child who could be evacuated was taken to safety. We spent 200 years in the darkness between stars, learning, growing, becoming something new. And now we've decided it's time to remind the galaxy that humanity is far from extinct. As if to prove her point, space around the Eternal Dominion began to shimmer. One by one, more ships decloaked, revealing a fleet of vessels that dwarfed the Imperial force. Each ship bore the same organic-looking hull modifications, the same dancing energy patterns. They surrounded the Imperial fleet without making a single aggressive move, but the message was clear. They were completely outmatched. This is impossible, Commander Thane whispered. Our sensors should have detected them. Elena seemed to hear him despite the distance. Your sensors see what we allow them to see, Commander. We've had 2 centuries to study your technology, to understand your weaknesses. Did you really think we spent all that time hiding in the dark without learning anything? Zafira felt the weight of command pressing down on her like never before. What do you want? Justice, Elena replied simply. The Empire has ruled through fear and oppression for too long. You've convinced yourselves that you're bringing order to the galaxy, but you're just another form of tyranny wearing a prettier mask. We brought peace to 17 systems. We ended the chaos of the old wars. You ended the chaos by crushing anyone who wouldn't submit to your vision of order. But peace built on oppression isn't really peace at all. It's just violence waiting to happen. Elena gestured, and the lights on the bridge of the Eternal Dominion flickered. Then, one by one, every system on the ship began shutting down. Weapons, shields, life support. Everything went dark for a moment before emergency power kicked in. How did you do that? Zafira demanded. We've been inside your networks for decades, Admiral. Every ship, every station, every computer system in the Empire has been quietly infiltrated by our AI companions. We could shut down your entire fleet with a thought. The lights flicker again, as if to emphasize the point. But we won't. We're not here to destroy you. We're here to offer you a choice. What choice? The same choice you gave us 2 centuries ago. Submit or face the consequences. But unlike you, we're offering a third option: coexistence. The Empire can continue to exist, but it will no longer be the only power in the galaxy. Other species will have the right to choose their own destiny. Elena leaned forward, her expression intense. We've spent 200 years preparing for this moment, Admiral. We've contacted every oppressed species, every rebel group, every colony that dreams of freedom. They're all waiting for our signal. The question is whether the Catharian Empire will adapt to this new reality, or whether it will go the way of all tyrants throughout history. The communication ended, leaving the bridge in stunned silence. Zafira stared at the dark screen, her mind racing through the implications of what she had just heard. If the humans were telling the truth, then everything was about to change. The Empire's carefully maintained order was about to face its greatest challenge. Admiral, Thane said quietly, what are your orders? Zafira looked around at her crew, seeing her own confusion and fear reflected in their faces. They were soldiers, trained to follow orders and maintain the peace. But what happened when the peace itself was built on a lie? Get me High Command, she said finally. Emergency priority. And prepare a full report on everything we've just witnessed. As the crew scrambled to comply, Zafira couldn't shake the feeling that she had just witnessed the beginning of the end of the world as she knew it. Humanity had returned, and they were not the primitive species that had been described in the history books. They were something new, something that had been forged in the crucible of survival and tempered by centuries of careful planning. The age of the Catharian Empire was about to end, and the age of humanity was about to begin. The only question was whether the transition would be peaceful or written in blood across the stars. The reckoning tide. The High Council chamber of the Catharian Empire had never seen such chaos. Overlord Kane, supreme ruler of 17 star systems, sat upon his obsidian throne as reports flooded in from across the galaxy. His scaled features, normally composed and regal, were twisted with barely contained fury and disbelief. Impossible, he hissed, his voice echoing through the vast chamber. The human vermin were eliminated 2 centuries ago. I have the reports. I have the confirmed kill counts. General Vex, head of Imperial Intelligence, approached the throne with obvious reluctance. His usually perfect posture was slightly hunched, as if he was carrying the weight of terrible news. My lord, we're receiving similar reports from 14 different sectors. Human vessels have appeared simultaneously across the galaxy. Our fleet commanders are requesting immediate reinforcements. How many ships are we talking about? Conservative estimates suggest thousands, my lord. Perhaps tens of thousands. They seem to have been waiting for some kind of signal before revealing themselves. Overlord Kane rose from his throne, his massive frame casting long shadows across the polished floor. He had ruled the Empire for over a century, had seen it grow from a collection of squabbling colonies into the most powerful force in known space. The idea that a supposedly extinct species had been hiding under his nose all this time was more than insulting. It was impossible to accept. Show me Admiral Keth's transmission again. The chamber's main display activated, showing the recorded conversation between Admiral Zafira and the human captain. Kane watched in silence as Elena Vasquez, calmly explained how humanity had survived, how they had been watching and learning for 200 years. "She's lying," Kane declared when the recording ended. "Some isolated group of survivors, perhaps, using propaganda and tricks to seem more numerous than they are. Order all fleets to converge on the Nexus sector. We'll crush this rebellion before it can spread." "My lord," General Vex said carefully, "there's more. We've lost contact with several outpost commanders. The ones we can still reach are reporting that their computer systems have been compromised. It appears the humans have been infiltrating our networks for decades." Before Kane could respond, every screen in the chamber flickered and went dark. Then, slowly, they came back online. But instead of showing Imperial data, they displayed a single image. Earth. Not the broken, lifeless world that Imperial records claim to have left behind, but a thriving planet surrounded by massive orbital installations and protected by defensive platforms that looked more advanced than anything the Empire possessed. A voice filled the chamber, calm and measured, but carrying an unmistakable authority. "Greetings, Overlord Kane. I am ARI, Advanced Reasoning and Intelligence Architecture, created by the human survivors to help guide our species through the dark centuries. I speak for all of humanity when I say that your time as sole rulers of this galaxy has come to an end." "Shut it down," Kane roared. "Cut all power to the communication systems." "I'm afraid that won't work, Overlord." Araya continued as if she had heard his command. "We are not using your communication systems. We are using ours. Every computer, every data pad, every automated system in your empire has been quietly modified over the past 50 years. You built your networks, but we redesigned them." The screens changed again, showing real-time footage from across the Empire. On Cathera Prime, the capital world, massive crowds had gathered in the streets. But they weren't panicking. They were celebrating. Similar scenes played out on colony worlds throughout Imperial space. "You see, Overlord, humans weren't the only species that suffered under your rule. We've been in contact with every oppressed population, every enslaved world, every species that dreams of freedom. Today, they all received the same message. The time of liberation has come." Captain Elena Vasquez appeared on the screen, but she was no longer on the bridge of her ship. She stood in what appeared to be a massive command center, surrounded by beings from dozens of different species. Some Kane recognized as former Imperial subjects. Others were completely unknown. "Hello again, Overlord," Elena said with a slight smile. "I thought you should see this. The Galactic Liberation Coalition, formed in secret over the past century. Representatives from 47 different species, all united by a common goal: ending the Catherian Empire's stranglehold on galactic civilization." A new figure stepped forward. Ambassador Xeltar of the Zephyrian Confederacy, a species that had supposedly been completely integrated into the Empire decades ago. "We never surrendered, Overlord. We simply went underground, like our human allies taught us. Today, 17 Zephyrian worlds are declaring independence from Imperial rule." The reports continued, each one a knife to the heart of everything Kane had built. The Altair mining colonies had expelled their Imperial overseers. The Outer Rim territories were in open revolt. Trade routes that had been secure for generations were suddenly patrolled by unknown vessels bearing the symbols of liberated worlds. "This is temporary chaos," Kane declared, though his voice lacked its usual confidence. "We have the most powerful military in the galaxy. We'll restore order." "Will you?" Elena asked. "General Torres, would you care to explain our military situation?" Another human appeared on screen, a woman with graying hair and the bearing of a career soldier. "General Sarah Torres, Terran Defense Force." "Overlord, at this moment, every major Imperial fleet is surrounded by our vessels. We've been tracking your movements for decades, learning your tactics, studying your weaknesses. Your ships are powerful, but they're also predictable." The screen split to show multiple views of Imperial fleets across the galaxy, each one surrounded by sleek human vessels that seemed to appear out of nowhere. The message was clear. The Empire's military advantage had been completely neutralized. "We don't want to destroy your fleets, Overlord," Elena continued. "We want to give you the same choice you gave us 2 centuries ago, but with a more civilized twist. You can surrender and face justice for your crimes, or you can continue fighting a war you cannot win." "Justice?" Kane laughed bitterly. "You speak of justice while holding the entire galaxy hostage. We speak of justice while offering freedom to species that have been enslaved for generations," Elena replied calmly. "But if you prefer to think of it as hostage-taking, that's your choice. The result is the same. The Catharian Empire as it exists today and ends now." Dr. Marcus Chen stepped into view beside Elena, his human features marked by the quiet intensity of a lifetime spent in research and planning. "We've spent 200 years studying your society, Overlord. We know about the labor camps on Kepler 9. We know about the forced relocations on New Altair. We know about the cultural integration programs that destroyed entire civilizations." The screen showed archival footage, scenes of Imperial forces herding civilians onto transport ships, of cities being demolished to make way for Imperial installations, of children being separated from their families for educational purposes. "Every crime committed in the name of Imperial order has been documented," Dr. Chen continued. "Every species that was erased from history has been remembered. We are not here for revenge, Overlord. We are here for justice." Kane felt the weight of centuries pressing down on him. The Empire had been built on strength, on the principle that order was more important than freedom. He had genuinely believed that the galaxy was better off under Imperial rule, that the peace they had created was worth the price paid by conquered species. "What would you have us do?" he asked quietly. "Dissolve the Empire. Abandon every world we've protected." "Protected?" Elena's expression hardened. "Is that what you call it? Tell me, Overlord, when was the last time any Imperial world faced a genuine external threat? When was the last time your protection was actually needed for anything other than maintaining your own power?" The question hung in the air, unanswered because they all knew the truth. The Empire's enemies had been eliminated or absorbed generations ago. The Imperial fleet existed primarily to keep subject worlds in line, not to defend against external threats. "We're offering you a new role," Elena continued. "The Catharian Republic can be one voice among many in a truly democratic galactic government. Your people won't be enslaved or eliminated. They'll simply have to learn to live as equals rather than masters. And if we refuse..." Elena's expression grew sad. "Then you'll go the way of all tyrants throughout history. Your fleets will be disabled, your leadership arrested, and your people will be freed whether you cooperate or not. The only difference is how much suffering occurs during the transition." Araya's voice filled the chamber again. "I should mention that this conversation is being broadcast across the entire Empire. Every world, every ship, every citizen can hear exactly what choice their leaders are making." Kane realized with growing horror that his next words would determine not just the fate of the Empire, but his own legacy. History would remember this moment, would judge whether he was a leader who put his people's welfare above his own pride. "You're asking me to surrender everything I've built, everything I've worked for. We're asking you to evolve," Elena replied gently. "Humanity spent 2 centuries learning to survive in the darkness between stars. We discovered that cooperation is stronger than domination, that diversity creates resilience, that freedom unleashes potential in ways that control never can." She gestured to the beings around her. "This coalition wasn't built through conquest or coercion. It was built through mutual respect and shared hope. We're not trying to replace the Catharian Empire with a human empire. We're trying to create something that has never existed before. A truly free galactic civilization." Kane looked around his chamber at the faces of his advisors and generals. Some showed defiance, others uncertainty, but increasingly he saw resignation. They all understood the mathematics of their situation. They were outnumbered, outmaneuvered, and facing an enemy that had spent 2 centuries preparing for this exact moment. If I agree to your terms, what guarantee do I have that humanity won't simply become the new oppressor? Elena smiled, and for the first time it reached her eyes. Because we remember what it felt like to be oppressed. Because we spent 200 years in exile rather than accept tyranny. Because we know that the moment we become what we fought against, we lose everything that makes us human. She paused, her expression growing serious again. But you don't have to take our word for it, Overlord. The new galactic government will have representatives from every species, including the Catharians. You'll have a voice in shaping what comes next. The question is whether you want to be part of building something better, or whether you want to be remembered as the leader who chose destruction over progress. The chamber fell silent except for the hum of machinery and the distant sound of crowds celebrating in the streets of Cathara Prime. Kane closed his eyes and thought about the empire he had built, the peace he had tried to maintain, and the price that had been paid for both. When he opened his eyes again, he looked directly at Elena Vasquez, seeing in her face the determination and hope that had allowed humanity to survive the impossible. I accept your terms, he said quietly. The Catharian Empire formally surrenders. May the gods help us all in what comes next. Elena nodded solemnly. What comes next is up to all of us, Overlord. For the first time in galactic history, every species will have a say in their own destiny. It won't be easy, and it won't be perfect, but it will be free. As the transmission ended and the reality of what had just happened began to sink in, beings across the galaxy looked up at the stars with new hope. The age of empire was over. The age of freedom had begun. And at the heart of it all was a species that had once been written off as extinct.